A single father sacrificed his chance at a job to help a woman, unaware that she was his CEO. Sometimes, one decision made on a rainy morning can change a whole life. This is a story about how simple human kindness opened a door where it was least expected, how turning down easy money led to true wealth, and how the most important interviews take place not in offices, but in the pouring rain on a potholed road. Before we begin, please tell us in the comments what part of the world you're watching from today. The truck shook with a clap of thunder, and the rain seemed to double in intensity. Carter gripped the steering wheel tighter, peering into the blurry space beyond the windshield. The windshield wipers were on full blast, but they were doing a poor job. The water poured down in a solid wall, turning the road into a semblance of a river. A glance at his watch made him swallow nervously. Only 12 minutes remained until the interview, and the city was still a good 15 kilometers away. His phone vibrated on the dashboard. Meeting reminder. Interview at Dalton Tech, 2 p.m. Don't be late. Read the message. He had set for himself a week ago. It seemed an unnecessary precaution then, now bitter. Irony. But he slowed down at the turn, and then his gaze caught on something unusual. A red sedan was parked about 50 meters from the road, at the very edge of a flooded field. The expensive one, judging by its silhouette, could be a BMW or a Mercedes. The car was clearly stuck in the mud, and a figure in a light coat was thrashing around next to it. The rational part of his mind was telling him, drive on. You have an interview. This job is your only chance. But his hands were already turning the wheel to the left, guiding the old Ford to the shoulder. Noah killed the engine and got out. The rain immediately drenched him in an icy wave, soaking his shirt in mere seconds. He shielded his eyes and ran toward the sedan, jumping over puddles. A woman stood next to the car, trying to pull her leg out of the sodden ground. Her gray coat, obviously expensive, was stained with mud almost up to the knee. The heel of her right shoe was hopelessly stuck in the liquid mass, and every attempt to free herself only made the situation worse. I need help, she shouted when she saw Noah. Her voice was a mixture of irritation and despair. This stupid hole appeared out of nowhere. Noah silently crouched down next to her foot. The heel was indeed stuck fast. The mud had almost completely sucked it in. He carefully grabbed the shoe and began to rock it back and forth, gradually widening the hole. Try to pull your foot out, he said, without raising his head. Count to 3. 1, 2, 3. The woman jerked her foot up, and the heel finally gave way. She lost her balance and grabbed Noah's shoulder to keep from falling. Thanks, she breathed, looking down at her ruined shoe. I thought I'd have to go barefoot. Noah was already walking around the sedan, looking appraisingly at the wheels. The car was indeed stuck solidly. The rear axle was almost completely buried in the soggy ground. She wouldn't get out of here without help. Do you have a shovel? He asked. A shovel? The woman looked at him as if he'd suggested she build a spaceship. Why would I need a shovel? Noah shook his head and headed for his truck. In the back, under a soggy tarp, lay chains, a rope, and a small entrenching tool, remnants of his previous work on a construction site. He pulled out the necessary gear and returned to the sedan. Get in the car, he said to the woman. Start the engine and wait for my signal. Noah spent the next 10 minutes digging the mud around the tires and securing the rope. The rain continued, turning the already difficult task into a real ordeal. Mud clung to his hands and clogged his fingernails, but he continued to work with methodical persistence. Finally, everything was ready. Noah started his truck, put it in gear, and slowly began to pull the tow rope. The old Ford roared, the wheels skidding on the wet asphalt, but then found traction. The sedan rocked and slowly, inch by inch, began to climb out of the mud trap. When the car finally found itself on a solid surface, Noah quickly unhooked the tow rope and reeled it in. There was no time for pleasantries. The clock showed 1:45. Another 20 minutes to the city, with any luck. With traffic. Wait, the woman called out, getting out of the sedan. I owe you a thank you. She reached into her purse and pulled out her wallet. Noah saw the wad of bills and raised his hand. No need, he said, heading toward the truck. Just be careful on the roads. But I insist. She called after him. You wasted time. You got wet. I have an interview, Noah. threw over his shoulder, already getting behind the wheel. I'm already late. He started the engine and sped off, leaving the woman standing in the rain with money in her hand. In the rearview mirror, he saw her looking after him, but there was no time to think about that. The main thing now was getting to town and at least trying to get to the interview. The drive into town had become a nightmare. The downpour caused traffic jams, and several cars slid into a ditch. The traffic light at one intersection was out of order. Noah nervously drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, watching the clock slowly ticking. 2:10 p.m., 2:15 p.m., 2:20 p.m. When he finally parked near the Dalton Tech office building, the time showed 2:35 p.m., 35 minutes late for the most important interview of his life. The glass doors of the office building reflected Noah's drenched figure as he burst into the lobby. Water dripped from his jacket onto the marble floor, leaving dirty streaks. The security guard looked after him, puzzled. I need to go to Dalton Tech, Noah exhaled, running to the elevator. 14th floor. The elevator seemed to take forever to rise. Noah tried to compose himself, wiped his face with his sleeve, and smoothed his wet hair, but he knew he looked terrible. Reflected in the mirrored doors, he saw a man more suited to working on a construction site than in the office of a prestigious company. The 14th floor greeted him with silence and the scent of expensive coffee. A young woman in an impeccable suit sat at the reception desk. She looked up from her computer and barely contained her surprise. "Good afternoon," she said cautiously. "How can I help you?" "Noah Carter. I have an interview at 2 p.m. He tried to sound confident, but his voice was trembling. "I know I'm late, but if it's possible." The girl quickly scanned something on the screen, and her face became sympathetic, but firm. "Mr. Carter, yes, you are scheduled. Unfortunately, the hiring manager is waiting for you until 2:15 p.m. She is currently interviewing another candidate. When will she be free?" Noah felt a sinking feeling. "Maybe I can wait." "I'm afraid not. After this candidate, she has two more, and then a meeting with management." The receptionist clearly pitted him, but a rule is a rule. "I can suggest you reapply in 6 months." 6 months. These words rang out like a sentence. Noah knew his situation better than anyone. He had just over $300 left in his account. The rent was a week overdue, and his son needed money for school supplies. 6 months without a job spelled disaster. "I understand," he said quietly. "Thanks for your time." "I'm so sorry," the girl said sincerely. "If you want, I can take your contact information in case something comes up sooner." Noah shook his head. He knew it was just a polite formality. There were dozens of people like him, people without a college education, without connections, with a resume consisting of a series of temporary jobs. Why should the company choose him? The elevator descent seemed even longer than the ascent. Noah stood, looking at the flashing floor numbers, and tried to accept reality. This job was his last hope. A good salary, official employment, prospects for growth, everything he dreamed of for the last 2 years, scraping by with odd jobs. Outside, the rain had subsided a little, but that didn't improve his mood. Noah walked slowly to his truck, thinking about how to explain to his son that his dad hadn't been able to find him again a normal job. The boy was only 11, but he already understood that their family lived differently than everyone else. His phone vibrated. A message from the neighbor who sometimes babysat Jacob after school. Jake asks if he can go to the movies with his friends tomorrow. He says the movie costs $12. What do you think? $12? It had seemed like small change before, but now Noah had to count every dollar. He typed back, "Tell me, I'll think about it." Even though he knew they didn't have money for a movie. Reaching the truck, he got behind the wheel and just sat for a few minutes, staring off into space. Maybe he should have driven past that woman. Maybe the job interview was more important than helping a stranger. But even thinking about it, he knew he would have done the same thing. He couldn't leave someone in trouble, even if it cost him his job. He started the engine and slowly pulled out of the parking lot. I needed to think about the next step. Look for other jobs, maybe. Go back to construction or as a loader, anything, just to earn a living. "But your HR department, my HR department, thinks you're too rude for our corporate culture," Claire interrupted. I quote verbatim. They believe that someone without a university degree isn't suited to work with our clients. Noah smiled bitterly. He'd heard that kind of phrasing before. A polite way of saying you're not their type. But I prefer to judge people by their actions, not by their paperwork, Claire continued. And this morning, I saw how you handled a critical situation. While I was panicking, you took control, resolved the problem quickly and effectively, and refused money, even though you clearly needed it. I was simply helping a man in need, Noah shrugged. Anyone would have done that. No, not anyone. A note of bitterness entered Claire's voice. Believe me, I know. Over the past 10 years, Over the years, I've met many people who would have passed me by or demanded payment in advance. She paused, looking out the window at the cars rushing past. You were late for the interview because you were helping me. So, I owe you more than dry shoes. I owe you a chance. What chance? Noah asked cautiously. Your employee said the next interview is only in 6 months. What if I told you I could offer you a chance to prove yourself right now? Claire turned to him, and an excited glint lit up her eyes. Not in 6 months, not tomorrow. Today, the Dalton Tech office was buzzing like a disturbed beehive. Employees walked quickly through the hallways, their faces gloomy. Raised voices could be heard in the meeting rooms, and phones rang incessantly. Claire led Noah through the chaos, nodding. People he met, but without stopping to explain. What's going on here? Noah asked, noticing one of the managers nervously talking on 2 phones at once. Nightmare, Claire answered curtly. Our shipment tracking system completely crashed this morning. We lost control of shipments in 6 states. She led him into a large hall where programmers and logistics specialists sat at a dozen computers. A huge screen on the wall displayed a map of the United States, dotted with red dots. Each one represented a lost shipment. How much are we losing? Noah studied the map with professional interest. According to preliminary estimates, it's around $8 million if we don't restore control within the next 24 hours, Claire said. Plus, there's the reputational damage. Some clients are already threatening to cancel their contracts. A middle-aged man in a wrinkled shirt, clearly the head of the IT department, approached them. His face had the expression of a man who hadn't slept all night. Claire, I've explained this 10 times already. It'll take at least a week to restore the system architecture, he said wearily. We can try temporary solutions, but they'll only work halfway at best. David, meet Noah Carter, Claire introduced. He's a logistics specialist. He might have some ideas. David eyed Noah skeptically. His wet jacket and jeans clearly didn't add to his authority. With respect, it's a technical issue, he said. 3 servers fell simultaneously. The database is corrupted. We can't do this without programmers. Noah approached one of the computers and asked to see the system diagram. The programmer reluctantly cleared up the space, clearly considering it a waste of time. Can I see the error log? Noah asked, studying the diagrams on the screen. Here you go. David waved his hand at the printout. Just don't say later we didn't try to explain everything. Noah delved into the documents. Diagrams, error codes, timestamps. It all added up to a certain picture. He had worked with similar systems in previous jobs. And something about this outage seemed odd. It's not a server crash, he said after 20 minutes. The servers are working fine. There's a problem synchronizing data between nodes. What do you mean? David frowned. Look, Noah pointed to the timestamps in the logs. The system is trying to update the same record from 3 different sources. A conflict occurs at the same time, and it blocks the entire process. But that's impossible, one of the programmers objected. We have protections in place against such situations. Before yesterday's update, Noah pointed to a line in the vlog. See, the new version of the algorithm launched at 2 a.m. That's when the first glitches began. Silence fell in the room. Everyone looked at Noah in surprise. A man who came off the street understood in 20 minutes what they had been struggling with for 8 hours. Even if you're right, David said slowly, how can we fix this? Rolling back to the previous version will take at least 2 days. And if we don't roll back, Noah was already drawing something on the board. We can change the priorities for processing requests instead of make the synchronization sequential. Temporary, of course, but it will restore Operability. The next 40 minutes passed in feverish work. Noah explained his idea to the programmers. They made changes to the code, tested, and fixed bugs. Claire stood nearby, watching her company slowly come back to life. Try it now, Noah said when the last lines of code were entered. The programmer pressed the start button, and everyone froze in anticipation. For a few seconds, loading messages flashed on the screens, and then the system came to life. The red dots on the map, one by one, began to change color to yellow, and then to green. It works, David exhaled. My God, it really works. Applause erupted in the room. People who half an hour ago had thought Noah a casual visitor now looked at him with respect and gratitude. He saved their jobs, the company's reputation, and possibly several $1 million. Claire Dalton's office was on the 20th floor and overlooked the entire city. The rain had finally stopped, and the first rays of sun were breaking through the breaks in the clouds, painting the wet rooftops golden. Noah stood by the panoramic window, still in disbelief. Please sit, Claire pointed to the chair opposite her desk. We need to talk. On the desk lay a thick folder with the company logo, and next to it a contract printed on expensive paper. Claire poured 2 glasses of water and sat down opposite. In the last 2 hours, you've accomplished what our full-time specialist couldn't do in a whole day, she began. David admitted that without your help, we would have lost at least a week and several major clients. I was just lucky to notice something others missed, Noah replied modestly. Sometimes a fresh perspective helps. It's not luck, it's professionalism, Claire said firmly. You saw a problem where others only saw a consequence, analyzed the situation, proposed a solution, and followed through. That's exactly the kind of person my company needs. She moved the contract closer to Noah. I'm offering you the position of head of logistics. The salary will be $120,000 per year. Full benefits package, health insurance for you and your son, plus performance-based bonuses. Noah looked at the numbers in the contract and felt dizzy. $120,000 a year. That was more than he'd earned in 3 years from all his temporary jobs combined. But why? He asked. You don't really know me. How can you be sure I can handle it? Because I've seen how you work. Claire leaned back in her chair. This morning, in the mud and rain, you showed me 3 important things. First, you're willing to help, even if it's not in your best interest. Second, you don't give up in the face of difficulties. Third, you turn down easy money, which means you have principles. She paused, looking out the window at the city, slowly lit by the afternoon sun. You know, in my 10 years of running this company, I've met hundreds of people with glowing resumes and references, but most of them only think about themselves. They're willing to screw over a colleague for a promotion or deceive a client for profit. And you were late for the most important interview of your life because you helped a stranger. And if I disappoint you? Noah still couldn't believe it was happening. Then I was wrong, and we'll break up, Claire answered simply. But I'm willing to take the risk. The question is, are you ready? Noah took the pen and signed the contract. His hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from excitement. For the first time in years, he felt like his life could radically change for the better. When do I start? He asked. Tomorrow morning, Claire smiled. You have a team of 12 people and a ton of problems to solve, but after today, I'm sure you can handle it. As Noah left the office, he felt like he was in a dream. The signed contract was in his pocket, and his mind was buzzing with plans for the future. He'll be able to rent a better apartment for himself and Jacob, pay for a good school for his son, finally stop counting every dollar. Outside, the rain clouds had finally dispersed, and the city was bathed in warm sunlight. Noah climbed into his old truck. Tomorrow he'll have to think about a new car, more suitable for the head of a department at a large company. Starting the engine, he recalled this morning. Back then, he'd driven to an interview without much hope, accustomed to rejections and disappointments, and now he was returning home with his dream job, which he'd gotten in the most unexpected way. His phone vibrated with a message from his neighbor. Jake wants to go to the movies after all. What's he decided? Noah smiled and typed back. Tell him he can go not only to the movies, but also to buy popcorn. Dad was very lucky today. The drive home seemed shorter than usual. Ahead of him was his son, whom he could tell that their life would finally change, that There would be no more endless job searches, rejections, and financial problems. That one act of kindness on a rainy morning opened the door to a future he had never dared to dream of. And most importantly, he realized that he would never regret that decision to stop and help a stranger, because sometimes the most important opportunities come not when you expect them, but when you do what your heart tells you.